Hello, Starshine. My name is Liz, and this is my channel, Simsational Stories. If you have not seen my videos before, and you enjoy this one, please like and subscribe, and maybe check out my other social media as well. I'm on both Facebook and Twitter. All relevant links are in the description below, and of course, if you're a Sims player and you'd like to download any of my characters, just search the hashtag Simsational Stories on the Sims 4 gallery. All original content is created by This Is Not Eric. Finally, before I begin my Simsational story, I'd like to issue this blanket content and trigger warning. The following story is just Sims, hey. I'm not going to apologise for treating them terribly, if that's what I've done. But I do want to assure you now that although I mean absolutely no harm, I completely understand if you feel unable to consume my content. Many loves, and we will catch each other on the internet elsewhere. Okay, so now we've gotten that over with. Let's go. Today's story is from the Fundamentalist Ferguson family, and we're at chapter 6. If you have not seen previous chapters and would like to catch up, there are playlists available on my channel so you can hear the entire story in chronological order. The rest of us are going to move on from where we left off last time though. So without further ado. The Ferguson family, consisting of Father Cameron, Mother Addison, twins Elijah and Esther, and young toddler Edward, live in suburban Willow Creek, in a beautiful refurbished bungalow Addison had inherited when she was young. Cameron worked as a surgeon, while Addison was a happy homemaker who also homeschooled Esther. The Fergusons liked to think of themselves as a pretty normal family, and they were for the most part, but they were also fundamentalist Sims. Each Sunday they had worship, an official holiday which consisted of a community service ceremony, remembrance of the dead, having a consciously thankful spirit, the setting of resolutions, and a grand meal. And then, on top of all that, they also concluded the evening with their own private family ceremony. Cameron would preach a little, and then they would all in turn confess to him their sins of the week, which he would, of course, kindly absolve them of. And although their son Elijah still remained in public education, for socialization, Cameron and Addison had recently made the decision to homeschool their young daughter Esther, and any other future daughters they might have for that matter as well. It just made sense to them to keep their girls safe from any undue influences. And besides that, Esther had always been a rather contrary child, even when she was very little. It had only gotten worse as she had gotten older. Esther raged needlessly against her divine destiny, always asking questions and resisting her role in the family dynamic. She required careful supervision from her mother so as to be regularly redirected to the right path. And as her parents didn't believe that she would receive the kind of attention she truly needed in the mainstream education system, they had chosen to keep her home now. Addison kept her daughter busy and by her side almost the entire day. The little girl was barely allowed a minute to herself, from before sunup when she collected the eggs outside, to after supper while she helped clean up. Esther had to account for every minute of her day, or risk facing her father's wrath. Cameron wasn't really that wrathful, by conventional standards. He never beat or yelled at his children, but Esther still lived in absolute terror of disappointing him. It was, from Esther's perspective at least, a rather miserable childhood. Elijah and Edward, the boys, were basically free to do whatever they wanted, but Esther, she felt like a slave. It hadn't always been so bad. She used to go to school when she was little, but then she'd ruined all that by stealing her brother's chemistry kit to play with. Her parents had pulled her out of school as punishment, and now she was stuck. Stuck all alone by herself all day, every day. Little Edward didn't count as company, not really. She didn't even bother with trying to get away with anything anymore. Esther was only 10 years old, and already rather depressed. She didn't know a single other girl her age, and she'd never had a friend. She was sad, lonely, and yet also woefully resigned to her lot in life. She knew she had no other future other than that which she was prescribed by her parents. That was when her papa announced that the family were going to be having another baby. Esther remembered it all so well. It was a Sunday, and Mama had made a roast chicken, which she herself wasn't eating much of. They were talking about how lonely she must be. Did they read her diary or something? And that God must have known it too, for he had sent her Mama a new life to grow inside herself to keep them all company. Due to their religious beliefs, Cameron and Addison hadn't planned this fourth child any more than they had their first three. But they were not at all unhappy with God's latest blessing upon them. Addison missed having a baby. You could hardly call Edward a baby anymore. And although they had their troubles with Esther here and there, they loved her deeply, and she'd honestly been so much better since they had begun homeschooling her. Better was a relative term. From her parents' perspective, Esther had definitely been better behaved, but from her own young eyes, all Esther could see in her life was misery. She had only quite recently found out that her father was planning to arrange her an early marriage to keep her out of trouble once she was a teenager, and she was terrified. Was there no escape possible? The only time Esther felt herself free was when she was outside with all the animals. She spent as much time as she could get away with out there, often making up excuses to go check in with her furry friends. Esther was a bit of an animal enthusiast. Something about being around creatures just soothed her soul. Originally, her outdoor chores had been just that, chores, but now Esther loved to do them. Esther took every opportunity she could to go talk to the cow and chickens and tell them all her secrets. They all had names and personalities to her, even the tiny chicks. And although they were all so adorable, her favourites were the babies. Esther just loved the little babies with their soft little feathers and innocent, trusting eyes. She hated knowing that they would one day have to eat them. In fact, Esther's love for babies was the one thing that gave her mother hope for her daughter's future. Even when protesting that it wasn't her job to take care of him, Esther had always been so sweet with Edward, and she was obviously excited about the new baby. Addison could see that Esther would make a wonderful mother someday, and it was her greatest goal for her first daughter that she and Cameron would be able to deliver her safely to that divine destiny someday. For now, though, Addison had another divine destiny to deliver, that of her second daughter. Edith Ferguson was born at 2:11 p.m. on a wintry Thursday morning, and she was brought home by her very proud parents to meet her older siblings just in time for dinner, which they'd hurriedly ordered on the way home from the hospital. Esther always remembered Edith's birthday every year afterwards, because it was the first time she had ever had pizza. Edith was a very quiet and peaceful baby, which was a pleasant surprise to Addison, who, after having had surprise twins and then the tornado that was Edward, had prepared herself mentally for the worst. However, instead of crying and screaming, her new baby would stare up at her with calm solemnity whenever she needed something. With such a miracle child, Addison was able to bounce back into her normal routine a lot quicker than she had with Edward. By the time Edith was 3 months old, Addison had her old figure and energy back, leaving Cameron in a daze of admiration for his amazing wife. She truly was a miracle sent from above to help him create and lead this wonderful family they were building together. Her beauty, grace, and strength inspired him daily. Cameron and Addison were picture perfect. Their little nuclear family was everything they'd ever dreamed of creating together. 2 little girls and 2 little boys, each with their own distinct personalities and temperaments, each a little miracle from above. And yet, this was just the beginning. Cameron and Addison planned to have as many children as naturally possible. They wasted no time about it either. Almost as soon as they'd brought Edith home from the hospital, Cameron and Addison had resumed their marital duties. Not that it was much of a duty for either of them. Deeply in love with one another, Cameron and Addison Ferguson couldn't wait to conceive their next baby. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 6 of the Fundamentalist Ferguson family. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can tune in soon to hear the next chapter. And hey, maybe think about sharing my channel with a friend. Or don't. It's your life. Anyway, bye!